What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY and Tesla in the overall market. I'm also going to talk about some very, very key levels to watch for. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30, and the offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, look at the market right now. We have a very interesting trend. Okay, the market is starting to pull back just a bit. We came just short of filling this gap, so I do think the market's going to see a small sell-off, just a couple of points. I think, for example, SPY could dip towards like 602 to 600 for a little retracement, but then that could be setting us up for a potential higher low again, and then that could also lead to another bounce to try to fill this gap. So I'll talk more about that in more details in just a few minutes. Just know we have two big catalysts for the day. This morning, we got ASML, which just rocked earnings. They did relatively well. And then after market close today, we have Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, and IBM all announcing their earnings. So get ready for some high volatility. Big tech is going to be shaking the markets, especially for after close and then going into tomorrow. Now, despite that, just know that there's another factor. Today is Wednesday, January 29th. As you know, it's FOMC day. This means that we have the interest rate decision coming out by the Fed at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So get ready for that. There is a 99% chance that the Fed is going to keep rates the same, not really raise or cut. They're going to keep everything just as is. And I think that's what the market's expecting. So this decision could cause a bounce in the market if it does get announced, because the market's already excuse me, the market's already expecting that, already priced this in. But then at 2:30 p.m., we have the press conference. This is when Jerome Powell, the big guy, is going to be giving his speech. Now, you guys have to be ready for this, because Jerome Powell is going to be talking a lot about what the Fed is going to be doing. And there's going to be a lot of questions about whether or not the Fed is going to capitulate, cut more rates than expected previously. And whatever they say is going to cause a lot of volatility. So I'll be listening to that very closely, and I would recommend to just be very careful, because once again, the Fed is known for causing high volatility in the markets, and it can make things very, very tricky sometimes. So you just want to remember that. But with that being said, so that's what we're essentially looking for, at least as far as the broader markets go for an intraday basis. A couple of things to know. Like I said before, we have big tech earnings. We have the big guy Jerome Powell giving a speech today. And then besides that, I saw other things out there. Starbucks announced earnings. They beat expectations. We went over this earlier. Despite the fact that they saw a little bit of a decline in their sales, there is still room for improvement. And we are expecting better growth, at least for 2025, hopefully. Besides that, ASML announced earnings. This is a Dutch semiconductor giant. And just know they did very, very well. So for the fourth quarter, they have earnings about €6 and 85 cents, or 6.85 euros a share, with sales at about 9.3 billion euros, beating all expectations on both ends. So good job by them. On top of this, we also saw their guidance coming out, which is not bad, suggesting there's still high demand for chips. And this is once again helping them to offset, a lot of the downside that came after the DeepSeek news. So it's a good piece of news, good for semiconductors. However, despite that, the market is still dipping just a bit. We're going to be watching some key levels. So on SPY, we're looking at 602 as our support. If it doesn't hold, I'm looking for like 600. Might be a little retracement. I think that's coming. And then there might be a lot of like shop. And then once the Fed and Jerome Powell, make their decision, it is possible we could try to come back up to fill this gap. And then we'll see if Jerome Powell helps us continue to pump, or if we get some kind of rug pull. So we'll just have to see. I anticipate a move like this, though, just to be very frank with everyone. I think the market's going to retrace just a little bit. We might see SPY shuffle in this area. We might dip to 602 to 600 before we see some kind of like upside move. So I'll be watching that, especially as we have this gap up here to fill. So please keep that in mind. The reason I say this is because when you look at like the 30 minutes time frame, SPY is showing some signs that it has like a double top here. We had like a rising wedge that was forming, and this could like kind of decline a little bit. So that would be completely healthy. It could be just like a dip before a potential pump that's coming thanks to the decision. QQQ has a very, very similar setup. We still have this gap to fill up here. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little retracement back down to like 520 or below, and then we'll see if we consolidate in like the 520s, and then eventually we'll see if Jerome Powell launches us back up like this. When the decision comes out, we should launch up, and then we'll see if Jerome Powell helps this, or if we get a rug pull. It depends on the big guy. But a little consolidation, a dip in consolidation before we see a bounce is very probable. Same thing with the Russell 2000. So I think that's we could be essentially kind of like dipping right here towards like 225. I think we're in a range right over here, going back and forth and back and forth. I wouldn't be surprised if we just dip a bit before we see a potential bounce like this. And then we'll have to see, do we get a bigger bounce thanks to Powell, or if we get this like rejection. I'm hoping we get a bounce, but we'll see just to be safe. ES has a similar setup. We're barely holding 6,080. We'll see if we hold this. Look for a move like this, and we'll see if we retrace to like 6,060 or so before we try to bounce like this. And then we'll see if Jerome Powell launches this back up. The Fed decision may launch this back up to fill the gap, and then we'll see, what does Jerome Powell cause a rug pull, or does he push us higher? It depends. We'll see about that, guys. Could go either way, but this is essentially what I'm forecasting. For NQ, same thing essentially, might retrace just a little bit towards like the 21,400s. I'm sorry, 21,511 area or below. We might be like retesting that. Then we'll see if the rate decision causes a bounce like this to fill that gap. And then will we continue to push thanks to Jerome Powell, or do we get a big rug pull? Right, we're just going to be watching it like this, but I am anticipating a move just like this as the most likely possibility. Bitcoin might dip a little bit, might be making a move back down to 101,000 or below, and consolidating in this range. Then we'll see if we get a big bounce here, or if we fail. So I'll be watching that very, very closely. For Nvda, same thing. Nvidia is retracing a little bit. As long as we don't lose our support, we could retrace back down to like the 123 or so area. But just know that we have a very strong base here. So I just want to see it hold these lows. If we lose these lows, it's going to be a bad sign. But as long as we hold them, there's a chance it can make a complete U-turn like this when the decision comes out. Then we'll see, does Jerome Powell give the rug pull, or does he cause a big push to fill this gap? It depends, guys. We'll have to see how that goes. But that's what I'm seeing for now. Tesla's going to likely shuffle between this range, between the low 400s and then 384. So look for a move like this on Tesla, just lots of sideways price action. Then it's Jerome Powell and earnings will either launch this back up or back down. We'll see. Depends on how things end up going for them, so keep that in mind. Just a few more. We have Aapl. Aapl has a possible inverse head and shoulders like setup. This might be like a left shoulder. This could be like a head, and this could be like a right shoulder, which makes me question, will this thing dip a little bit back down to like 230 or so, consolidate? If we hold that and we start to bounce, this could be an inverse head and shoulder setup, looking for a big break like this to start pushing back up towards the 240s. Or is it a trap, and are we going to lose 230s to start dipping? We'll see about that. It has a setup. Coin, this has a gap to fill up here. So if we break 285, we're looking for essentially 289, then this gap fill. If we reject and can't hold 280, we're looking for a dip back down to 275. I'm hoping we try to break past 285. I think there's a lot of potential in this nonetheless. For Amazon, we look more bullish as we're making higher highs and higher lows. If we manage to break past 240, we're looking for essentially 245 or so. It still looks very, very bullish. But I think what's going to happen at first is we may like kind of like shuffle around here for some time like this before we see some kind of like a break. So watch that very closely. For Meta, we're looking bullish as we're making higher highs and higher lows. Going to be looking for an attempt to break 680. If that's the case, we're looking for 690. If we lose 670, we're looking for a dump back down towards 660. But this is favoring upside. I think it shuffles here before it pushes for closer to 690. Microsoft looks more bullish. As long as we don't lose 440, we favor that is going to try to continue to push. Break 448, and we're looking for essentially 452. Might dip a little bit towards like 444, consolidate, and maybe push for 452. Google looks bullish. If we could try to hold above 198, I think it might attempt to fill this gap back up to about 201. So keep that in mind, guys. There's potential in Google. With that being said, guys, I thank you all so much for listening. Market may retrace a little bit and consolidate, but then we're going to be looking to see if we get a bounce later on to fill this gap, and we'll see what happens when the decision comes out, not to mention Jerome Powell's speech. Thank you for listening, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one, and peace out.